What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. Time for our Big Ten post-spring power rankings, and let's just get right to it. We'll start at the top with Ohio State and Oregon. This is Tier 1 in the Big Ten. I think no doubt about it. These teams are absolutely loaded, especially Ohio State. I think Ohio State has a chance to win a real chance to win a national championship this year. You look at their team, really no weaknesses. Maybe a little bit of a step back at wide receiver. Linebackers, maybe a little bit of a step back, but they're still going to be really good. Those are not, when I say a step back, I'm not saying they're going to be bad at either of those spots. They're still going to be really good. Everywhere else, they're elite. I mean, this team is elite. If Will Howard can get it done at quarterback, which that's, we'll see. But I think this team has a chance again to be maybe the best team in the country. Oregon is not far at all behind them, though. This will be a strong team once again. A great group of wide receivers, and Dylan Gabriel steps in at quarterback. Secondary going to be maybe between Ohio State and Oregon, these are probably going to be the top two secondaries in the Big Ten, and they're both going to be elite there. All right, let's go 3 and 4. Penn State and Michigan. I really haven't changed thoughts on the Big Ten very much. You look at Penn State, I am concerned about the wide receiver position. They lose Lambert Smith now to the transfer portal, and that's not a strength. They don't have a lot of depth. They don't really have anyone proven at that position. Tight ends will help them out, but this is a team that's going to rely on the run game. And then in the on defense, I think they're going to be solid. Maybe the the cornerback position is not great, but everywhere else I think they'll be really good. You look at Michigan, of course, the questions are going to be about the offense. You can say, well, they ran the football last year, but they had Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. What happens if Donovan Edwards goes down with an injury? There's not a lot of depth at running back. The offensive line's not going to be as good as it was last season. There are some real concerns for Michigan. Thankfully for them, they've got a great defense, and that defense still is going to make them a tough team to beat. All right, number 5 is Iowa. Also, they should have a very good defense right there with Michigan, right there with Penn State. Iowa might wind up actually having the best defense in the Big Ten this year. We'll see. Offensive line is going to be really strong, so I think they'll be able to run the football. But can they find a passing game? Can they find a passing game? That's going to be a big question mark. They just brought in a transfer at quarterback, so we'll see what that quarterback race looks like. Or maybe it does wind up being Cade McNamara. We'll see. But Iowa, if they can get just an average passing attack, they've got the pieces everywhere else to maybe play spoiler in the Big Ten. It's going to be tough, though, with no divisions. So they don't just get to win the Big Ten West. They've got to go out there and finish ahead of Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon or Ohio State. So I think it'll be tough for them. But this is a team that I think has a chance to be pretty good. Wisconsin and USC kind of right behind them in the next tier. These two teams should be very solid. You look at Wisconsin, both teams will be good, but both teams do have some question marks. For Wisconsin, I think, it's really the defensive line, the front seven. Is that going to be good enough when they go up against really good run teams? And can they get enough out of the passing game with Tyler Van Dyke and, not a lot of depth at wide receiver? I think the run game will be strong. I think the secondary will be really good. But Wisconsin right there, and then USC behind them. Offensive line, how good will they be there? And then, because I think, the passing game will be good. I think the run game will be good. If the offensive line can be good, I don't think this will be an offense that's as good as it was last season. That's the crazy thing. If you look at this team and this roster, they are not going to be as good offensively. They just lost Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner. They also lost a ton of great receivers. I mean, there are some definite downgrades on this team offensively, but then you go to the defense, and really it's just about the new coaching staff. And what can they get out of these players? There's talent there. I really like their linebackers, but they had talent last year. They couldn't get it done. So that's going to be the question for USC. They could, if their defense makes a big improvement, they could be right there among the top teams in the Big Ten. Or I could see them struggling again and fighting just to get to a bowl game like they did last year. All right, 8 through 9, we got Washington, Northwestern, and Nebraska. Washington going to look a lot different. A lot of transfers, new coaching staff. My big concern with Washington is the offensive line. The offensive line is definitely going to be a concern. They're going to have like 5 new starters basically up front. The defense is not going to be as good. I have concerns. I have concerns about Washington. I think they could potentially take a major step back. But there are still some pieces there. We'll see what it looks like. Northwestern, number 9, just added a transfer quarterback, Mike Wright. So we'll see if he winds up winning that starting job after losing Sullivan. This is a team that, they're pretty good across the board. Cornerback position is really the only spot I put down as a pretty big weakness for them. I don't think they're great or really good anywhere, but they're pretty good everywhere. And so it's an interesting team. They surprised us last year. We'll see if they can do it again this year. Now, number 10 is Nebraska. Dylan Raiola at quarterback, of course, the big story here. How much can he do in year 1? And it's very similar to Northwestern. I think they're going to be pretty good across the board. No major weaknesses. Maybe the secondary could be a little better, but they're not great and they're not bad. So they're a team that should be able to beat the bad teams and probably can't beat the best teams. And they'll probably finish right there in the middle of the Big Ten. Let's go to 11 through 15 now. We've got UCLA at number 11. New coaching staff, a lot of new faces on this roster. It is, it's a much different roster. But I say that, but if you really dig into it, they do have some pieces coming back. I mean, it's not like they're starting over. I think people, even me, I was like, well, wow, look at the players they lost. But this was a pretty deep team. They had a lot of depth, so even though they did lose a lot, I think they've got guys ready to step in there and help them out, add in some transfers as well. I like their wide receiver group. I don't think they're going to be bad anywhere. And so it's really just about this new coaching staff and what they can get out of this team. You got Maryland at 12. This is a team that was pretty good last year without Tagovailoa at quarterback. What will they get from that position? Concerns about the offensive line, concerns about the cornerback position. I think they will not be quite as good as last year, but still should be a solid team. Minnesota at number 13. I love the transfer they brought in at quarterback. This should be a really good running back room. Receivers, not bad. Daniel Jackson, a really good player. Offensive line, is it going to be good enough? You look at the defensive line, it'll be pretty good. The safety position, pretty good. Linebacker, cornerbacks, maybe they could be better there. But this will be a decent team. Indiana is a team that I think could surprise this year. I've got a number 14. I think they had a home run hire with the coach that they added, the players they've added in the transfer portal. I think this team could definitely surprise some people. Everyone's expecting them to just be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten again, but I think they could be potentially even a bowl team this year. Watch out for the Hoosiers. Michigan State, number 15. A lot of new faces, a lot of transfers. They had a lot of losses after spring. So I don't know. I don't know what we're going to get from Michigan State. It's definitely a big question mark. They've got a really good group of linebackers. I think a defense with Jonathan Smith as the head coach that can be pretty good. Offensively, you're going to, of course, depend on a young quarterback, but they'll have a good running back group. Can the offensive line block and get that running game going? That'll be the question there. And then at the bottom, we got Rutgers, Purdue, and Illinois. Look, I know everyone's high on Rutgers. I think they're going to have a pretty good season. They've got a really favorable schedule, but when I really break down this roster, it's just not great. I think the quarterback position, the wide receiver position, that's a problem. They're not going to be able to throw the football. They added in Kaliak Manis from Minnesota. He wasn't very good at Minnesota. And I don't know if the offensive line is going to be good enough to where this team can just run the ball. Maybe a step back there. So I don't think the run game is going to be quite as good, even though I think the running back group will be just as good. And defensively, I think they're not going to be quite as good as last year. I'm concerned about the cornerback position. So yeah, I know a lot of people high on Rutgers. I'm not really that high on them. Purdue at number 17. This is a team that's probably going to struggle again. You've got a good running back group on offense, but what will the passing game look like? Defensively, they should be okay, but it's not going to be great. And then Illinois, our final team at number 18. I think you look at this team, and they did just add Terrence Brooks at cornerback, so that's going to help. But it's a team that the offensive line is this. Brett Bielema has built his teams on great offensive lines, and I just don't think they have that. I don't think they have very good receivers. I think they're going to struggle offensively. And defensively, I don't think they're going to be very good there really either. They'll be okay. And so I don't think there's any terrible teams in the Big Ten, but I would say that Illinois is probably going to be the worst team in this conference. So you guys can give me your thoughts on the Big Ten. Let me know what you think and how you'd rank the teams down in the comments below.